Glad to see all of you here today. I want to start with this little perspective from Jim Rohn. Many of you have heard me quote him many times. He's one of the what I would call great digital mentors. For me, he's passed away many years ago, but he was the former like Tony Robbins of his time. And Tony actually calls him his great mentor and coach. And Jim Rohn talks about this idea of how success is not something you attract. It's not something that you can pursue. If you try to pursue it or attract or chase it, it's going to elude you, is how he says it. And essentially what you want to focus on is understanding of the question of how do you actually attract the success that you want, whatever your goals are. And today's conversation is going to be very specific to helping you get clarity around your targets for 2025, but also how we get there faster. So too often, I will say that people will come to these sessions looking for what I call the magic bullet. Like, what's that one strategy, that tactic that if I go deploy it, I'm going to be able to hit my goals? And then they wonder, maybe 6 months down the road or a year down the road, why they don't have the same results as maybe one of the speakers that we had up here in these sessions. And the reality is because it comes down to the beliefs, the perspectives, your psychology. The way that Tony Robbins talks about is he says that 80% of success is your psychology, only 20% is the mechanics. Only 20% is the actual strategies that you deploy. And so as we go through this conversation today with Heather, what I really want you guys to focus on is not necessarily the tactics, the strategies that she's deployed, but I want you to think about how she thinks, okay? Gary Keller, the way he talks about it is that you need to think like a CEO. And that's the one encouragement that I'd give all of you coming out of this is you are an entrepreneur, you are a 1099 contractor, but the reality is that you're the CEO of your own business, and you need to think of it that way. And as you listen to Heather today, I want you to really pay close attention to the systems that she's built, the mindset, the principles that she's followed to attract success. And her journey to becoming $1 million agent didn't happen by chance, but it really happened through purposeful and being intentional with how she delivered value to her clients. So those are the things that I want you guys to pay attention today. So let's dive in and learn from somebody who did a phenomenal job at raising a new bar in 2024. Come on up, Heather Groom.
Well, thank you.
Yes, great to see you.
I'm bringing a bunch of little things up here.
Awesome.
By the way, happy Chinese New Year. I'm wearing kind of red and black. We talked last year and it was Chinese New Year and I gave out tassels. I don't know if some of you remember. It was so funny.
I still have mine hanging up in my home office right by my computer. So.
Oh, that's so awesome. Well, I brought something too to celebrate Chinese New Year. So I don't know if some of you know, my daughter's over at Duke University in Shanghai in China. And so she's celebrating Chinese New Year. And I thought this is a great time because this is Year of the Snake. So I told Shoni I wanted to talk on this for a second because Year of the Snake, and I don't like snakes, by the way. Usually I hate snakes, but they shed their skin. And so the Year of the Snake is symbolic in kind of a rebirth, a new beginning, getting rid of the things that are not working for you and starting over. And so I love that. I chopped off my hair like on New Year's Day and colored it back. And I'm kind of going for something different. But I brought a little red envelope for all of you, and it's got a dollar bill in it because you're on your way to $1 million each. And you've got to believe it too. But I'm going to have Madeline, my assistant, and my husband's here too, which is awesome. And they're going to pass these out. But these are lucky envelopes. And so in kind of Chinese culture, they give everyone these red envelopes, and it's a sign of good luck. So you're starting off the year with amazing good luck. Year of the Snake, it's not going to bite you, but you just remember to shed that skin, that old skin off.
That's awesome. Are these kind of like fortune cookies? Do they have something we have to open and everything?
Well, there's a dollar bill, but there's no, but you know what? You can put your intention in it. So kind of, that's what I would encourage you to do is write your intentions for the year and put it in, and then put it somewhere where, like, a lot of times they hang them up like in their house or in a tree, just somewhere where they can see it. So anyway,
awesome.
So you each get a red envelope. Like I said, now you only need to make 999, and 99 and 99.
Wonderful. Well, Heather, I actually want to start with just some of the highlights for your business last year. We actually had a similar conversation for those of you who came to this last year. And, this was actually, we in 2023 in December, the fourth quarter, we had something called Business Boot Camp. How many of you came to business boot
It
camp?
was like fall
Yep,
of
it was
23.
And it was an 8-week deep dive into radically changing your business in fourth quarter. And I remember you and I were having a session in my office and talking about your business, your goals for 2024, walking into the new year. And one of the things that you said with full confidence is, I'm going to make $1 million in 2024. And there was no doubt, no hesitancy at all. But I'm just curious, as you think about going back to that time, because now we're sitting here and it's that dream, that goal has become a reality, right? And I just want to walk through that. When did that belief breakthrough actually happen for you? When did you decide that you were going to accomplish that? And when you started to see yourself as $1 million agent?
That is such a great question. So, and hopefully I don't get too emotional about this, but a lot of you, I didn't really tell many people about this. I'm going to rewind from that boot camp. So it was actually in 2023, in July of 2023. You know how you plan your life and everything's going really smoothly and you think it's all planned out perfectly. And my husband had been working at Microsoft for almost 20 years. He was going to retire with his stock in a year. And in July, right before a year and 5 days about that before he could retire, he got laid off. And and that really rocked our planet because it hurt our family in a lot of ways because we'd already planned out stock retirement. We just kind of needed this extra year. They told him it was a spreadsheet decision. He had been always award winning, so it was pretty much a big blind side, and it was about money. It was about stock and money, and that was in July. So I want to kind of build the timeline because that was July 2023, and that was a rock bottom for us. And in that time, 3 months earlier, we had just closed on a new house. It was when interest rates had jumped up, so our house payment was about double what we thought it would be. We were going to do our landscaping. I was just about ready to put a deposit down and we had to kind of put that on hold. It was our daughter's senior year. Our 2 sons had been married and were out of the house. And it was really scary because we also own 9 rental properties. Not that we own them. I like to rephrase that. We have mortgages on all 9. So we need tenants, right? And so it was a really scary thought because all of it rested on me at that moment. And when that happened, I remember exactly where I was in that moment. And it was very stressful. And I didn't have the thought even, by the way, about making $1 million at that time. And then it was July. In August, I brought Brent with me and I never wanted him to feel bad about that. And I said, you take a few months off. He had some severance. I said, I want you to find yourself and figure out what you want to do. And I took him to mega agent camp, right? And so that was July, he got laid off. The next month I went to mega agent camp and I remember watching the people on stage and people were talking about they were MREA and they had made $1 million. And that was the first time I really actually thought about it. And I thought, what do I need in order to make all my house payments? Not that I need $1 million, but what am I going to be okay if my husband, because it's hard to get when you're getting older to get another job. And I thought, if Brent doesn't get another job, what do I need in order to not, be stressed? And it popped in my head. If I became an MREA, if I made $1 million next year, we'd be able to make the house payments, we'd get health insurance, it would be okay. That was the first time. And because I saw it, and I want to just give this pattern. When we see it, then we think it, and then we have to believe it, and then we do it. And he didn't get a job for almost 10 months because it was a hard market. It was a hard job market. And so after Mega Agent Camp, I came back. That was in August. And in September, we started the boot camp. And I said, I need to go back to basics. And I kind of thought about it. And it was at that boot camp, and it was a great boot camp. I hope you do it again this year. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. But I also said, I need to be careful with my health, because I didn't mention this. At the same time, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis because of all the stress. And so I was working and living in my red light sauna, and it was just a very low point in our life and really stressful. And so I said, I need to also not, work too much, right? I mean, I've got to be able to help people. And so I shifted my mentality to, I need to help more people. It wasn't about the $1 million as much as it was, can I make the $1 million and instead of an or, but and still have a life and have good health and do it. So that was kind of my mindset. And then in during boot camp, I set that goal and I kind of kept it to myself because I thought, I don't know. I'm like, I was still shaky on it. Okay. So
Yeah, and it's something that you hit on, which is Mega Camp. For those of you who have not been, please put it on your calendar. It's in August.
absolutely.
This one's going to be in San Antonio, Texas, and it is 2 days packed of Gary Keller interviewing the top real estate agents across the country. And it's about 78 interviews like this, where he just goes back and forth with these top agents in all different categories. And he does that for 2 days straight. So it's an awesome example to be able to see people who are performing at a very high level. And going back to your kind of, I'll call it a model, right?
Right.
Which is we have to recognize these patterns that show up in life. And so you talked about how you have to see it first, see that it's possible.
Yes.
And then you have to start to think or believe like, well, what if I aimed for a higher
Mhm.
target, right? And it doesn't always have to be $1 million. That shouldn't be the target for everybody. But you have to ask yourself, what is my potential? What am I capable of? And what do I want to chase? And then it has to directly impact your actions, right? So it has to
Mhm.
cause you to do something differently than you have before. So I'm curious how, when you started to think, hey, this is actually something, a direction I want to head in, and I want to aim for this target of $1 million, how did that start to influence your actions throughout the year?
So I love that. And one of the things I want to say about that is that after I started thinking about the million, it became maybe someday. I think there's two lists we have, and I think Cameron Wilson was talked about that: the someday list versus the I'm going to do this list. And so my why changed, and it came off from the someday to the hey, this is a really good year to do this right now, and my why had changed. And so then tell me the last part you said, that what would you like?
Well, I actually want to pause for a
Yes.
second. Did anybody just catch what she said about that year? This would be a great year to do this. How many agents in 2023 in the market that we've been in have said this is a great year to make $1 million? Right? What is the most common when you go on Facebook threads and you start seeing people post about this market? What are they commonly posting about right now? Yes, wham, wham, wham. That's basically it summed up, right? Is they're not talking about what's possible, they're talking about their limitations. And whenever we fight for our limitations, that's actually what we get more of. And so just recognize that, catch that she started to think beyond what's normal of this is a great year for me to be able to go do this. When most people actually saw a decline in their business, your business actually grew by 70%.
Yes. And I want to hit on 4 Ds that Gary Keller also, I remember hearing it at Mega Camp. And they said divorce, death, degrees, and diapers. And those are when people are buying in any market with all 4 of those. So divorce, degrees, let's see if I remember them. Divorce, degrees, death, diapers, right? Because maybe they've got a growing family. And I had to get my mindset. So anytime people complained or they say, oh, it's a terrible market, I had to just get that out of my head and say, you know what? I am in this. And again, my drive, while it was $1 million, I remember I wrote it on my whiteboard at home, but my drive really was to help more people because in the last few years, I had been doing more with divorces and deaths, actually, a lot of probate, people divorcing. And so I loved that I could help them through that and that I knew I could help them. And we have the coolest job, by the way, in the universe. I mean, we get paid well to help people. How amazing is that? Like, I feel like I could just like jump up and down. But when I saw how I could help navigate really difficult situations like that, it kind of propelled me because I thought, how many more people can I help? And that had to be my mentality. It wasn't about the million. It was, and it wasn't. It was this is going to be a kind of a product, a byproduct of my year. But I really wanted to be focused more on just having a servant heart and helping people wherever they were at. Also, one other thing I want to jump in right there is that I also heard, I'm one of those people that now quotes Gary Keller. By the way, I never had any Gary Keller quotes, but I also heard him at Mega Camp refer to this, and this actually was a huge shift for me. And I'm paraphrasing, but he said, realtors are really good at closing people that are 0 to 3 months out from buying. We suck at closing people 3 months to 12 months out, or 3 to 24 months out. And I heard that actually not at this last mega camp, the mega camp before. And I remember that really hit me. And that's one of the things that has helped me a lot grow my business, because I've made 2 different lists of potential buyers or sellers. And I have lists now where it's like a, 0 to 3. And by the way, I don't have any cool tech tools. Okay. But, but I just have a list, and I've got a spreadsheet, and I say, okay, I'm going to move this person from out of the 0 to 3 months into the 3 to 6, or and then I have like a 6 to 12, and then a beyond 12 month, because it needs to be about the friendship. It needs to be about helping people. Every single person needs real estate. Every single person benefits from it. And having that mentality of also, even we call them first time home buyers, they're first time investors. And I like having that kind of mind shift. And I tell them that. I say, you are a first time investor, because this is not going to be your first property. This is not your only property. And studies show that you're going to move out of this place in 2 to 7 years, and you're going to need something else. And you may buy a rental property. And so I think just having that mind shift also helped.
It's one of the pieces too is interesting, because if you just look at that as a higher way of being able to support your clients, realizing that people owning homes, if you've seen the stat, the difference of a net worth between a renter and a homeowner is drastic. It's a massive gap in wealth. And so treating first-time home buyers, not as first-time home buyers, right? But treating them as they're going to, if you focus on how can I earn their lifetime business? How do I be their agent forever? And how do I start helping them to build wealth, right? So stop focusing on just the one transaction, but how can I really help them start building that long-term future? Love that. If you were to maybe just, there's another saying that, I know we're going and quoting a lot of Gary Keller, but he is really one of the greatest masterminds in the real estate industry. But he talks about how success is built sequentially. It's one thing at a time. So it's never, you can't pinpoint one piece and say, this is what changed the whole game for me. But when you joined KW, was it 4 years ago now? 4.5?
Exactly 4 years ago. I was December of 2020. So
Yep.
December of COVID. Yep.
So in that first year, your income tripled coming over to KW. And now you've crossed that $1 million mark. So what were a few things that you feel like have drove that amount of success and growth your first year at KW, then also that milestone that you've hit in 2024?
So I love having a team leader. By the way, I love how KW is just structured in general, because if you've been at a different office, you know that it's kind of like a broker is kind of all the same person, and they don't really explain how to grow your business. So I remember when I came, Shoni, actually I met Shoni, but he was not the team leader at the time. It was Tim Hewlett. And he was this coach, and I remember I literally cried in his office 4 times. It was so funny because I do not cry. But I remember he was like, do you know what your production is? I was like, I don't know my numbers. I don't know anything. Like, I just was kind of like hoping for the best, every year. And I had really was kind of this, I had started at a flat fee brokerage. I had started saying I was only going to do this part-time. I wasn't 100% committed. I was coming out of political world and business world and a different thing. And I was just like, but I knew it was just not my people. And I knew it wasn't my tribe. I knew it was just like, not where I went. And it's funny because I came downstairs and I actually remember seeing all of these posters. And I remember seeing the move from E to P, which is entrepreneurial, because I love to start businesses in a bad way sometimes because I'm always like, hey, I've got a new idea, But then it says to move from entrepreneurial to purposeful. And I remember how that hit me so hard. And I went, that's what I'm trying to do is I own a business, and we are business owners. Our vehicle is real estate. And I want to be really clear on that, because it was a mind shift for me, because I think a lot of times we downplay what we do. Like, we change people's lives. We are problem solvers. Like, when I had this mindset shift when I came to KW, and I realized that I have a problem solving business. And that is so cool. I get like paid to like solve problems and make people happy. Okay. And I just remember like having people that believed in me. And I remember that Tim just looked at me and he had actually calculated the numbers and he goes, you know that you're on track to like triple your production? I honestly had no idea. And I was like, whoa, really? And I went, no way. I didn't even believe him. And then I did. And then and when Shoni got me team leader too, I just loved coming in and actually talking to them. And I love how KW is structured that we have like mentors here. We have this great ecosystem here where we have new agents, experienced agents, we have commercial agents. It's like if you are struggling with something, you can find it. You can find an answer or solution here. And I didn't have that at my last brokerage. And I felt very alone. And being a solo agent, a lot of times it's a lonely place. And I still felt like I was new because I'd really just been kind of part-time until I really came to KW. And then I was like, I love what I do. And I'm surrounded by winners and people that care and want to win. And again, I loved everything. And I remember I didn't have the MREA book, the red one. And I remember I opened it, I read it, and I was like, this is amazing, you know? And so that's what really changed it. But being around winners and being around people that believe and want the best for you, that's really a game changer. And I don't know if we really like understand how different that is. And if you've been at different brokerages, not to rip on other brokerages, I mean, they all, they're very nice, but I just didn't have that support. And I even had gone to my broker and I said, I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. I'm working 80-hour weeks. I'm tired. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I just didn't have any answers or help or tools. And it was a very difficult time. And so I loved when I came to KW. And like I said, just go and read those 6 posters.
Yeah, the 6 personal perspectives, phenomenal for just shifting our mindset, how we
Yes.
view our business. 2024, I know one of the massive changes and shifts that happened was leverage, right? Was changing how your business was actually structured.
Yes.
And I want to talk about the power of a great hire, because one of the biggest shifts you made last year was bringing Madeline in as your executive assistant. And one of the realities, I know there are a lot of top performers in this room where we love control.
We love doing it ourselves.
Right? We don't want to let go of the things that we like getting done a specific way. But the reality is you actually have to be able to do this. You have to be able to let go and bring in some support. And there's actually this idea. I had a great mentor who said, Shoni, you can do anything, but you cannot do everything.
I love that.
Right. And so we have to get very purposeful with our approach and ask ourselves, what is the highest dollar per hour activity I could be doing? And how can I bring in some support to help me with the other things? So just walk us through the impact that had on your business, bringing Madeline in.
I love Madeline. Madeline's here, by the way, and she's a rock star. So I couldn't do this without, honestly, Madeline and my husband too. And so if you don't have a Madeline and a spouse that believes in you, literally come chat with me, make friends in this office, but you have to have people that believe in you. Because for me, like I said, when I came over to this office and just knowing that I had one person that believed in me, which was the team leader at the time, that made a huge difference. And then just your support system and building that. And but Madeline was awesome. She actually used to do my hair at the blow dry bar like once to twice a week. Thank you, Sally Price, for introducing me to Prodo. And so I met Madeline, and I don't even know why, but one day I was like, we had become really good friends. And I said, would you even think about maybe doing something different? And she was like, yes. And so I did it the right way. I did a KPA. I knew that she was very systematic. And what I did, and I had somebody else also go to lunch. Cameron went to lunch, and I was like, can you tell me what you're seeing too? Because I had hired wrong. And when you hire and it's not working out, it's kind of a gut punch. And I was feeling really bad about my last few hires. I'd hired out of desperation. And also I tried throwing money at problems and not giving direction. And I was like, okay, I have to do this right this time. So I did better on career visioning, number 1. And I was really committed, and I looked for a few attributes, and I'm just going to give you those. But I wanted somebody who was hungry and that had drive and that knew how to hustle, and that also would be loyal and helping in that vision, because I needed somebody that had really also that could just keep me going. The other thing I did is I made a list of Heather not to do list, is what I called it. A Heather, please don't even go near my passwords. Literally, I have saved myself from the computer this last year. I was like, sometimes I'm like, Madeline, don't even give me the password to that because I don't want to know it and I will screw it up. So technology is not my strength and friend. So I basically said all the things that I procrastinate. If you're procrastinating something, it means you hate doing it. And what's interesting about 2024 is even though I had this huge increase in production, I didn't have the burnout that I had in 2023. And part of that is that I recognized the things I didn't like doing. And that became basically my job description, right? For an assistant. And so I basically said, what are the things I really hate doing or procrastinate or what are those things? Madeline could tell you well what they are. Okay. So, but she was the right hire and she didn't have any real estate experience, but she changed my life and my production and my leverage. And what's really interesting is at the end of this year, my husband and I went back and we were looking because we had to travel quite a bit. And this last year, because our kids were living in all these different locations. My daughter decided to go to China. So like I went to China twice last year. And we looked and I really was not at home 3 months of the year last year. And so even though I worked remote, I was gone. I mean, and that's pretty amazing that I was able to do that. And Madeline kept things afloat. I was like, Madeline, I love you, so, but she kept things going and we just kind of worked into a system. And she was the right hire at the right time. And I'll tell you what also, just kind of going back to how I told you kind of how we'd had that rough year that when my husband got laid off, I hired Madeline when my husband still did not have a job after 7 months, and it was a complete risk. So when I hired her, Brent was still unemployed. I was still making all the house payments, the mortgage payments, all of those things. But Johnny had said something to me, and he said that some of his biggest regrets were when he didn't put enough investment into one of his investments. And he said, you've got to invest in yourself and your business. And I realized I had been running too lean. And if you run too lean, you can't help more people. And again, it's not about my production. I really tried to I had that like number off in the distance, but it really became about helping more people. And I said, can I service them at a high level without help? But I hired Madeline, which was a complete leap of faith when my husband still did not have a job, but I invested in my business at that time. And it was scary, but it worked out. And I would say most likely if you do not have an assistant or even a TC or something, you're running probably too lean.
Yeah. Yeah. And leverage looks different at different stages of your
Mhm.
career for
Yep.
clarity. So up front, if you go and read the MREA, it starts with systems and tools. So you can get a lot of momentum from just putting systems and tools into your business, right? Next week at 11 a.m. in this session, we're going to talk about AI. How do you leverage that as a tool to get more results out of your efforts? But then at a certain income level, you need to start looking at team. Okay. So tools, systems, and then team. How do I bring other people into my ecosystem and that allows you to run faster? You've also had your fair share of let's call it learning curves through the last 3 years, right? As we brought in different people into your business, there's been things that you've learned didn't work, right? And you've had to let people go. But one of the things that you mentioned that's important is the KPA. For some of you may not be familiar with that. That's the Keller Williams Personality Assessment. It's essentially like the DISC, a personality assessment, but it's specific to real estate. And so it actually tells how an individual might thrive or not in a specific real estate industry. And so that's a very good tool to use as you're looking to bring on leverage into your business. Heather, I want to shift gears a little bit because we did talk a little bit about this, and this is something that's kind of come through already, but I want to just look through these months. So this shows your production month by month. You were off to a hot start first quarter. Okay.
Yes.
So January, 26,000, February, 126,000 in income. March was 157,000 in income. And then it went to 8,000 in April and May. Okay. How did you feel? Like, what was your thoughts at that time where you're still committed to your goal, or what beliefs were coming up in that moment?
And it's actually interesting because it only says 8,000 in, I think it was April, or one of them was actually a 0 month, just to be clear, but the check didn't
Rolled
get rolled over. And so I was like, "Ooh, okay, yeah." So what happened was it was my daughter's senior year. And again, I was trying to also balance my health and I was going to Mexico. That's another whole topic, but I did some kind of alternative treatments. And then basically I kind of had this good start. And then it was her birthday. I hired Madeline end of January. So we were busy kind of training. And you always have to remember you're 3 months out in real estate. Anything you're doing on right now, you're going to see it reflected in your production in 3 months. And so we were busy training, doing things. And so that kind of moved away from my production. In addition, February is a really weird month for me because I have family reunion and then Parade of Homes down in St. George, which I do. It's a chunk of my market is. And February is just a very insane month for me. So I'm traveling quite a bit. March, it was my daughter's 18th birthday, and I wanted it to be special. And so part of that was not intended, and some of it was intended because part of it was, I think, just to keep in mind um, that life happens, and I didn't want to miss out on her 18th birthday. I didn't want to miss out on the end of her senior year. And so we were spending more time with her also during that time. And so, but I will say for my psyche, I kind of panicked because I went, okay, I'm having these 2 down months, which I could kind of see happening. And I had to shift and I went into scarcity and fear mode. And I had to really work on that a lot. I did some breathing. I started to have a little bit of like panic, even of just like, again, my husband was just about ready to start a job. And I was like, okay, I've got to really be on my A game. And it was weird because those are months that usually people have really decent months. And those were not great months for me. And again, partly intended, part not intended. And then I had to really just it in some ways it was like a blessing in disguise because instead I basically said, well, at this point, I have nothing to lose. I have nothing to lose. I'm just gonna just run and hit it hard. And instead, I'm just going to see how many more people I can help. And I knew that if I didn't hit MREA that year because of my 2 bummer months, I was pretty committed to doing it then, no matter what. I knew, again, it was on that someday list, but I knew I didn't really have the limitations just because I just said, well, at this point, I'm probably not going to hit it. It's okay. I'm just going to move it out of my brain and I'm just going to hit it hard and help more people. And again, it was really focused on helping people and serving them at a high level and what I could do in that market to help people.
Yeah. So one thing I just want to highlight with this idea, I was at Gary Keller, he has these CEO masterminds, and one of the books that he recommended 2 years ago was called The Hard Things About Hard Things. And it is far more for when you're starting to build a team and you're in leadership or you're thinking like a CEO in your business. Ben Horowitz is the author, and he talks about how I actually just want to read this quote because it's interesting. And he says that the hard things about hard things, life is a struggle. He said, I believe that within that quote lies the most important lesson in entrepreneurship, which is to embrace the struggle. And so not only are we in a challenging market, not only do we have life that throws us curveballs all the time, but we have to consistently say, what are we doing to see things not only as they are, but see things for better than they are currently, right? And so we have to consistently look towards the future of what we're trying to obtain. And then we have to take specific actions to make that reality. What most people do when we're not on track for a goal, they tend to adjust their goal. So they said, if I'm not on target for 150 by the middle of the year, I'm going to just slightly lower that goal. Okay. But what people do that are thinking at a high level is they actually adjust the action steps. They don't change the goal. So I'm curious if you were to say, okay, this last half of the year, because if we look at these numbers, last half of the year, you crushed it and you had some phenomenal months back to back that brought you over the $1 million mark by the end of December, right after Christmas, right? So
Totally.
what action steps changed for you the second half of the year?
I basically just said, who needs my help right now? Who needs my help? And how can I help them? And I just started to have that perspective. And I started thinking of different people that I knew that maybe had sold a company for example. Maybe they needed to invest some money before end of year, because I always think about taxes and things, right? And I think just kind of on the same line, one of the things that I think as realtors, we don't really realize is all of us have different calendars, and different people we serve, right? And again, another Gary Keller quote, but or maybe it's Jay, but I read this and they said, you are perfectly positioned to help the old you. And I loved that, because think of who you once were. I was a first time home buyer once. I didn't know what in the world I was doing when we bought our first home. Luckily, it worked out. I've been a first time investor. I've been, I've done, I've, I've been in these other situations, and we forget that we have expertise, right? Start with even your own neighborhood. You are the expert of your neighborhood, and you can own that. You can help people. And so I think we don't think about what our calendar is. And I became more pensive, and I looked back at the previous year and I said, who bought, who purchased? And I would highly recommend you do this for your last years of production. Who did you help in what months, and what was their scenario? And I started to see a pattern. And in fourth quarter, I helped people that were business owners. They usually go and they meet with their accountant in September, October, August, September. They usually figure out what they need to do. And so I started sending out things to people and saying, hey, do you need to buy a property, or have you thought about buying a property by end of year? There's some tax advantages. Here's what's great. You know what? They responded. And again, look for the patterns. We don't, our business actually has little cycles. And so some people might be really heavy at selling in, the summer. Summer for me traditionally has not been my strongest months. Usually it's fourth quarter. And so I knew, and I prepared this time to be ready in fourth quarter and who to help, because again, I had reviewed who I had helped before in previous months.
Love that. That gives me this idea. I believe that life rewards two things. Life, number one, rewards effort. The amount of energy that we put into our craft is directly given back to us in rewards. The second thing that it rewards is the size of problems that we figure out how to solve. And so when we look at real estate, and we look specifically at helping clients through the process, through the journey of either buying properties or selling a home or buying assets, investment properties, there's a lot of things that are a lot of hula hoops we have to jump through, right?
Mhm.
And it's actually one of the biggest emotional roller coasters for buyers and sellers to go through. And so as agents, when we figure out how do we actually serve our clients at the highest level possible, and how do we provide as much value as possible to our clients, it directly impacts the reward, right? What we get at the end of the year. The last thing that I'd love to get some clarity on, Heather, is if you just say, well, what are some of the things that you intentionally do? You go back to that initial idea you talked about, is a lot of agents are great at finding the now business, right? How many of you don't have to raise your hand because I already know the reality of the answer of this. How many of you sold the client, you helped them buy a home or sell a home 3 years ago or 4 years ago, and you haven't talked to them since? Okay. And the reality is that's the unfortunate part about our industry, is that we are always looking for who's going to basically pay the bills now. And we're not looking for who can we serve, where they could be 3 years, 4 years down the road and choose to use me because of those interactions, of those ways of providing value over time. So what do you do strategically to provide value to people, even though they may not be ready to buy right now?
So I think we have to be careful. And of course, I'm not a tools, junkie, right? I mean, we've established that I'm not a tech person. And I know I'm leaving, and truthfully, I know I'm leaving a lot of money on the table by not using tools. But there's a give and take, because I think a lot of times we put people on like property watch lists and we just let it go. And we don't follow up. We don't do anything. And that is something that is problematic, because then people know, like, to them, they interpret it, put yourself in their shoes. Then they see it as you're just a number. You're not a friend. You're not a person that cares. And so I also tried really hard to even text or call and really stay in touch with people better about that. And one thing that I did also last year that I want to point out, in a market like right now, and this was actually really big for me, when I asked myself who needs my help right now, I expanded out from just Utah or in my service areas. And I would ask my friends like in Arizona and say, I grew up in Arizona, and I said, you know, like I knew somebody was going through a divorce. And I said, do you want me to help interview realtors? Do you know how many times they said yes? I did more referrals last year. I did 3 times the referrals than I've ever done last year. And I did them because I expanded my I think we kind of just say, okay, I'm in Utah County and Salt Lake County or whatever. But it was, I can help people. And I am the perfect person to interview agents for them because I know them and I know what they need. And by the way, it's not that they always need a top producing agent. They might need somebody that just is maybe close to their home. Maybe it's somebody that, and I actually called a team leader last year and interviewed and basically said, I need 3 names out of your office. And so I did more referrals last year. Referrals are amazing because you just get this kind of, I mean, Amber, like you get a magic check, right? But the thing is, all the other thing that was so great about referrals, I mean, I could do like sing the praises of this forever, is that I was taking care of my friends and I got paid and they were so happy. Like I had a client that was moving to Alabama and I interviewed agents for him. And this one, she stuck out because she said, you know what? I know that neighborhood well. I sell it all the time. I talked to her on the phone before I referred her. And again, don't just look in command and send your person out the door and don't talk to that person. Call the agent and call a few agents. And I talked to her and she said, I actually door knock that neighborhood and she goes, I think I actually have an off market property. And in talking to her, I had told her he wants 10 acres. He was very specific about what he wanted in an area that's very difficult. She went and knocked the neighborhood. She found an off market property for him. And he was so excited. I think he liked her more than me, by the way. But anyway, but I'm saying it was so great. And he thanked me because he said, thank you so much for caring enough because we would have just, you know, like picked a realtor. And do you know what's interesting is for the first 4 years I was a realtor, I don't know if I ever did a referral. Truthfully, like my first few years, I didn't even think about that. But again, you're helping people all over the world. We have KW all over the world. How awesome is that? So if they're looking for a condo in Costa Rica, you know, I even have a client thinking about that. Have that conversation. Open your horizon to more than just right here.
Yeah. And Heather, I just want to say thank you for coming today. I do appreciate that 2 things. One, the way that you raise the bar, right? So thinking of anybody in this room has the ability and potential to reach whatever goal you would set. And it really just takes a small tweak in your perspective, your beliefs, your habits, your routines to get the outcome. And so I want to just end with any other last piece of advice or anything you want to throw out as we wrap up today.
So, yeah, I think because I know so many of you in here and you all can do this. This is like, again, I didn't even have the thought cross my mind that I could do it. And then it kind of went into thinking. And like I said, it was something that I needed to see. And as humans, we pattern what we see. And just really quick, I want to share 2 quick things. But I remember reading a story about a mom had written an article in a newspaper. And she said, my son, who was born without a hand and he loves football, never thought that he could play football until he saw somebody in the NFL play football that didn't have a hand. And it broke that barrier. I am not anything amazing, extraordinary. All of you are capable of doing this. If you see it, you think it, you believe it, you'll do it. You can become unstoppable. And I would just encourage the brokerage to get an MREA wall somewhere in this building. It's not an ego thing for me. I don't even care. You can draw a stick picture of me. I don't even care. It doesn't matter. I just think if we see it, we will do it. And I just really, if this is something that you want to do, set that and believe it, and you will become unstoppable. And again, have the mindset that, again, it's not about your commission, it's that you can make it a win-win for your friends. And again, my clients are my friends, all of our clients are our friends, but you can do this. this is something achievable. And the last thing I just want to say is, for years, people didn't think that anyone would break the 4-minute mile. And then once it was broken, thousands of people now have broken that. And so this is just the beginning. And I'm going to say, I know that some of you are in here are going to do this year. So do it and believe it and become unstoppable. So thank you.
Thank you. Give her a hand. Thank you, Heather. I'm going to do a 60-second little final thought to wrap this up, because this is, for me, my biggest takeaway from this. Can I get a volunteer? Somebody raise your hand. Who's athletic in here? Jordana, you want to come up? Not that athletic. Don't worry. This is just something to help drill into your head how important this is. I will, Jordana, if you can jump over that water bottle, I will give you a $5, $10 gift card. $5, I guess, can't go very far anymore, right? So $10 gift card. If you could jump over it without touching it. Okay. Give her a hand. Pause. Now, this is where your feet were. I want to see if you can actually jump higher than this. Is it possible? Interesting. Okay.
Oh,
I'm not going to have you keep going. We could if we had time. The reality is, this is how we are wired, is we tend to set a very low bar for ourselves on what we're going to accomplish. And there's a saying to something to the extent of the problem with setting goals is not that we set our targets too high and miss, it's that we aim too low and we hit. And so just think of this reality is that humans are hardwired for the least amount of energy output to get the result. So I'm going to just jump barely over this, right? Everybody would have done the same thing. So it's not on Jordana. Everyone in this room would have done the same exact thing. The question is, what's my best? With anything that I do, what is the actual best output that I can throw out right in this situation? And so specifically with your real estate business, ask yourself, what's possible for you in 2025? If you were to actually play full out, if you were to actually use your skill sets, if you're actually to study and become a master of the real estate industry, what's possible? And aim for that. And final thought is, I had a great mentor when I was 21, and he said just this funny saying that he would say to us, all of us young individuals that he was mentoring, and he would say, I would rather aim for the moon and land in the stars than aim for the roof and land in the garbage can. Okay. Which is just essentially setting your bar high, setting standards that are not, what other people might prescribe or put on you, but asking yourself what you're truly capable of and then aim for that. So thank you all for coming. Please be here next Tuesday and enjoy lunch. Have a great week.